Welcome to Managing Nebraska's Public Roads and Streets, Planning and Reporting, 1- and 6-Year Plans, Rule and Regulation, Title 428, Nebraska Administrative Code, Chapter 3. This video focuses on how to complete a work project form, one of the 1- and 6-year plan forms required for counties and municipalities. This is the 8th topic in a series of videos, the purpose of which is to summarize Nebraska's management of public roads and streets as directed by state law and also by rule and regulation. The target audience is county highway and city street superintendents and those aspiring to attain those positions. Elected officials and anyone interested in the management of the state's public roads and streets are also encouraged to view this. Before watching this video, it is important to view and understand the information presented in the following videos. Introduction to Nebraska's Highways, Roads, and Streets, the Big Picture. Classification and Standards, a series of 10 videos. It would be helpful to watch all of them with the possible exception of the video on the Americans with Disabilities Act. And 1- and 6-year plans. The current 1- and 6-year plan highway or street improvement project form, designated as Form 7, from the regulation currently in effect, 428 NAC 3, is shown on the screen. The NBCS proposes to replace it with this form. The reason for changing the form is the adoption of new standards in 2016. The proposed form is consistent with those standards. Until the regulation goes through the rule-making process and is approved, this is a non-mandatory form, as you can see at the bottom of the interim form. The NBCS prefers that you use the proposed form because parts of the form currently in the regulation do not fit the new standards. For example, the old design numbers such as RL2 or RC3 or ROA1 no longer exist. 3R standards are in place for the first time for county roads and municipal streets, and the standards tables have changed significantly. The proposed form presented in this video with a version date of June 6, 2017 could change at any time, or as it goes through the rulemaking process. If it does change, you will be notified. After the rulemaking process, adoption by the NBCS and approval by the Governor's Office, the form will not change. The purpose of the form is to disclose to the public basic project information, such as the scope of work, if right-of-way will be acquired, the length of the construction period, the cost estimate, the funding to be applied, and other information. It also discloses project information to the NBCS, such as interlocal agreements, functional classification, design standards that apply, traffic volume data, the status of studies and analyses, potential relaxation of standards requests, notifications of revisions to the 1-year plan, and other information. Filling out the form is quick and easy. The real work is done before you start filling out the form. If you are unfamiliar with the form, look it over, scan it, to see what information will be needed. Then you need to plan what information needs to go on the form. The level of time and effort is a function of available and applicable facts, requirements, assumptions, projections, and estimates. Some will be based on your asset management inventory, on historical data, going out and getting the data, or making assumptions. You may need to count traffic and convert to ADT and percent heavy trucks. You won't always have an engineering review or a pavement determination or a TSL report available when you complete the form. It is good to be as accurate as possible. You want your planning process to have integrity, and after all, it is a public record. Of course, as the project gets closer to being added to the 1-year plan, you can make revisions. You just don't want the project to be advanced to the 1-year plan and then find out the cost has doubled. Title 428, Chapter 3 has instructions for completing the 1- and 6-year plan. It can be found online at either of the 2 web addresses shown on this screen. A hard copy can be obtained from the Nebraska Department of Roads Liaison Services section. Instructions for the proposed work project form can be found at the links on this slide. For the purpose of this video, these are the instructions that will be used and referenced. For projects that were adopted and submitted to the NBCS with the previous 1- and 6-year plan and have no changes, a copy of the previous document can be submitted, and there is no need to have a fresh signature and date. If there were any changes to the project, For example, to any key items, the previous document cannot be submitted. The changes must be documented, and the appointed superintendent must sign and date. If a project was pulled out of the 1 and 6 year plan, even for 1 year, and in some year following gets put back in, a copy of the old document cannot be submitted. In that case, the appointed superintendent must sign and date, and the project is considered a new project for the purposes of reporting. Key items are identified on page 13, instruction A7. They are the length or location of a project, the functional classification, the anticipated speed limit, the proposed surface type or width, the type of work, whether it's new, reconstructed 3R or maintenance, the structure type, and the design loading. Also, a bridge or structure added to the scope is considered a key item that needs to be reported. If any of these get revised, or if the project changes in any of these ways, you must submit an updated 1 and 6 year plan highway, road, or street improvement work project form to the NBCS with the revised box at the top of the form checked, and identify the key item or key items that have changed. Changes to key items on works and projects in year 2 through year 6 of the 1 and 6 year plan are typically reported along with the next 1 and 6 year plan submitted to the NBCS. If a project is in the 1 year plan, it must be submitted right away to the NBCS. On the proposed form, key items appear in bold, italicized font. This video will now go through the form and its instructions. All instructions for forms are in Section 8 of the proposed instruction manual. Within Section 8, instructions specific to this form are in subsection 5. Technically, this is called out as 428 NAC 3-008.05. An instruction, for example, could be 428 NAC 3-008.05A6, which is Title 428 NAC, Chapter 3, Section 8, Subsection 5, Part A, Subpart 6. Instead of saying all of that, this video will say Part A, Subpart 6, or simply as Instruction A6. Section 8, Subsection 5 begins on page 13 of the proposed instruction manual. There are a few instructions that apply to all 1 and 6 forms and therefore are not in Section 8, Subsection 5. Those will be called out in full. They are in 428 NAC 3-008.02 on page 7 of the proposed instruction manual. An example is the first entry on the form, the name of the political jurisdiction. That instruction is in Section 8, Subsection 2, Part A, and will be called out as such, so the reference is clear. One thing to keep in mind is that this is only a form. It is a tool for communicating to others what the work or project is all about and how much it will cost. The form requires certain information. For some projects, you may need to add explanations so that it will make sense to others. So always keep in mind that it is not just another form to fill out. It is to help the public understand the project and the program. The work project form can be viewed as a series of groups of information. General project information is at the top, including project identifiers, a brief general description of the scope of work, and why the project needs to be done. It is followed by a section to report revisions to the work or project, and in the shaded area, any notification of a revision to the 1 year plan. Below that is a section to indicate the functional classification of the road or street and the standards that apply. Design speed and the anticipated posted speed limit, which are key to determining standard values, must be indicated just below the standards group. Traffic volume information is next. This information is important when determining standards values. The next 3 groups of information, roadway, bridge and structures, and other scope of work, provide more details on the existing facility and the planned scope of work. The status of any drainage study, relaxation of standards request, cost-effective analysis, or other cost-benefit analysis are indicated in the Studies and Analysis group. Below that is an indication of professional engineering services and the anticipated construction schedule. An estimated work or project cost and how it is being funded is in the Financial group. Finally, at the bottom is a place for the appointed superintendent to sign and date the form. Instructions for each group are identified on this screen and will be shown again as the video progresses through the form. The following series of slides provides instructions for each entry on the form from top to bottom. It would be helpful to see an example project being input as the form fields and instructions are reviewed. A hypothetical project will be used for the example and is assumed to be a bridge replacement project on a 25-mile-per-hour paved county road with turf shoulders. The location is just outside of municipal corporate limits in a commercial industrial area. Construction is expected in 2020 at a cost of $750,000, funded by the City, Federal Highway Administration, State Aid Bridge Funds, and local funds, the local funds being split among the city and county. This is not a real project. If some of it doesn't make sense, don't worry about it. This is for demonstration purposes only. General project information at the top includes project identifiers, a brief general description of the scope of work, and why the project needs to be done. Refer to pages 6, 7, and 13 through 15 of the proposed instructions. The first entry on the form is the name of the reporting political jurisdiction. This screen shows a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet which is available for users. It is not a part of the regulation and therefore is non-mandatory. The printed form within the regulation is mandatory. If you use this spreadsheet and print it out as is without changing its form, it conforms to the regulation. If you make up your own electronic file, when you print it must look exactly like or very close to the form within the regulation. This video uses the Microsoft Excel spreadsheet for demonstration purposes only. Referring to row 1 of the spreadsheet, the first entry on the form is the name of the reporting political jurisdiction. In row 1 of the spreadsheet on the right side are 3 checkboxes. They express the status of the project, existing, new, and revised. Either 1 or 2 boxes must be checked, depending on the status of the project and any revisions being made. The rule of thumb is, if the project is existing, check the existing and revised boxes. Unless the project has not changed and you are only transferring information to a new form, in that case do not check the revised box. If the project is not existing, check the new box and don't check any of the other boxes. Never check all 3 and never leave them all unchecked. Either the existing box or the new box must be checked. An existing project is defined by proposed instruction A6 on page 13 as one that was included on the most recent annual 1- and 6-year plan or was submitted to the NBCS as a revision to the 1-year plan. You might ask, what if the project was on the 1- and 6-year plan 2 years ago or longer, dropped off last year, and is being added again this year? Is it considered a new project? Yes, for the purpose of 1 and 6 reporting, the NBCS will treat it as a new project. It is not considered an existing project if it was not on last year's 1 and 6. However, it can still have the same project number as it had previously. Check the third box, Revised, if the project is existing and it meets the definition of a revised work or project in instruction B3, which includes these 3 possible scenarios. A key item changed from the previous submittal, or the project is advanced to the 1-year plan as a result of the annual 1- and 6-year plan public hearing, or the project is advanced to or removed from the reporting period's 1-year plan after its adoption, but before the following reporting period's 1- and 6-year public hearing. When submitting the 1- and 6-year plan to the NBCS, be sure to report any changes that occur as a result of the 1- and 6-year public hearing. See instruction B6. Regarding the first scenario, 1 or more of the key items changed. The changes must be described in the revision section of the form. The NBCS requires documentation as to what is being revised. Later in this video, the revisions part of the form will be discussed. What this means is that once the revised work project box is checked, there must be 1 or more boxes checked in the revisions part of the form. For our example project, we are assuming it is a new project, that is, it was not on last year's 1 and 6 year plan. Check the New Work/Project box. Row 2 of the spreadsheet is the space to enter the project number assigned by your agency, and on the right side, the length of the project. Instruction 2D addresses project numbering along with sections 9 and 10. Instruction 2E addresses project length. The only requirement in the proposed instructions for the project number is to use the prefix C if your entity is a county, and the prefix M for municipality if your entity is a city or village. After the C or the M, the numbering scheme can be whatever your entity prefers. In the past, many have used a scheme that incorporates the governmental unit number. These numbers are in section 10 of the instructions. Once a project number has been used, it must not be used for another project, even if the original project is indefinitely postponed, unless no money has been expended on that project. See Proposed Instructions, section 9 on page 30. The example project number is C-2235 in parentheses. The project length is 1/8 of a mile, or 0.125. The instructions say that lengths can be rounded to the nearest 1/10 mile. However, the spreadsheet rounds any numbers to the nearest 1/100th of a mile, so what you see in this case is 0.13. For a work scope consisting only of work on a bridge, non-buried structure, or buried non-bridge sized culvert, and no work is required on the adjacent roadway by the minimum design standards, enter NA for not applicable. That is not the case here for our example project, since the plan is to replace the paving on both ends of the bridge. For the units, there is a drop-down box. The choices are miles, feet, or blocks. These units are the ones most commonly used. If the units are something other than those, enter the applicable units. Row 3 of the spreadsheet may not be used very often, but it is there for projects that have another number or numbers associated with it. Recall that the example project is partially funded with federal money. In that case, the Nebraska Department of Transportation assigns unique federal project identifiers, a project number, and a control number. Some non-federal aid projects may have another project number, but not have a control number. That is perfectly fine. Either enter NA for not applicable or leave the space after control number blank. For the example project, use BR-5049, 3 in parentheses, as the project number, and 16739 as the control number. Row 4 of the spreadsheet provides a space to describe the location of the project. This is a brief description using road, street, and highway names and numbers. Identify the starting and ending points. Keep this simple. Latitude and longitude and legal descriptions are not necessary. This is a document that should be clear and understandable to the general public. The location description for the example project is on 638th Avenue, starting approximately 0.18 mile north of Road 6, ending approximately 0.3 mile north of Road 6. Notice that there is a limit to the number of characters for this space in the spreadsheet. So keep the description brief. If you need more space, use a separate sheet. See instruction 8.1D. Row 5 of the spreadsheet. The purpose of this row is to indicate the existence of or plan for an interlocal agreement with another agency. If there is an interlocal agreement, or it is pending, or you are anticipating such an agreement, check the Yes box. If not, check the No box. You must check one or the other. If the Yes box is checked, indicate the name of the other entity in the space on the far right of the row. The agreement could be between a municipality and a county, two counties, two municipalities, a municipality and the Nebraska Department of Transportation, a county and the Nebraska Department of Transportation, etc. It could involve other agencies such as the Natural Resources District or the Game and Parks Commission. Reference the Interlocal Cooperation Act, Statute 13-801, and Joint Public Agency Act, Statute 13-2501. The example project assumes an interlocal agreement with the adjacent city, Fairview. Row 6 of the spreadsheet. The purpose of this row is to allow space for a brief description of the scope of work. Usually this will be only the major parts of the scope of work. The example project scope of work is replace bridge and approach guardrail and repave approximately 300 feet of roadway adjacent to each end of the bridge. As is the case with the location description space above, there is a limit to the number of characters for this space in the spreadsheet, so keep the description brief. If you need more space, use a separate sheet per instruction 8.1d. Rows 7 and 8 of the spreadsheet. In row 7, enter or select the applicable reason or reasons for the work or project. A reason is what is driving the work or project and why it is being done. It can be a transportation deficiency, a problem to be solved, an unsatisfactory condition, a community need, or it may be other issues. Some common reasons are listed, each with a checkbox. These are to be checked if applicable. There may be only one problem driving the project, or there may be more than one reason. Check all that apply. If none of the boxes apply, or there is an additional reason, or further explanation is necessary, use the Other space, row 8, to explain and clarify. The next group of entries is about revised works and projects and notifications of revision of the one-year plan. Row 9 and 10 of the spreadsheet provide space to describe changes for a revised work or project. The purpose of this space is to document what has changed on the work or project whenever the revised box in the upper right of the form is checked. The possible changes are one or more key items changed, or an existing project was advanced to the one-year plan either as a result of the annual public hearing or at some point after the governing body's adoption of the 1- and 6-year plan. If the revised box in the upper right of the form is not required to be checked, do not check any of the boxes in this section. Leave it blank. If the revised box is checked, there must be an entry in this space. For those projects, the existing box in the upper right corner of the form will also be checked. If revisions to any of the project's key items are being reported with this submittal, check all of the boxes that apply. If an existing project is advanced to the one-year plan as a result of the annual 1 and 6 public hearing, check the box just below the key items. Also, check the boxes of any key items that changed. Check the box at the bottom only for existing projects being advanced to the one-year plan between annual 1 and 6-year plan public hearings, and none of the key items have changed. If there were changes to the project, check the applicable key items and do not check this box. This checkbox only exists for the case that no key items have changed. Since the notification of revision of one-year plan will also be completed for this project, it could be perceived as a duplication. However, what it does is provide a description of the revision without having to go to another part of the form. The example project is a new project, therefore leave this section blank. Do not check anything. Rows 11, 12, and 13 of the spreadsheet have a light gray background and is where a notification of revision of one-year plan is reported. These are revisions that happen after adoption of the annual 1- and 6-year plan by an action of the governing body and before the following annual 1- and 6-year plan public hearing. In other words, between annual 1- and 6-year plan public hearings. What the proposed form does, for those of you familiar with the current rule and its forms, is combine Form 7 with Form 10. If there is a notification of revision of one-year plan related to this project, check the Yes box. If not, check the No box. One of the two boxes must be checked. There are 4 basic reasons for filing a notification of revision of one-year plan. Number 1, revisions to any of the project's key items. Number 2, a new project is added. Number 3, a project is advanced from the 2nd through 6th years of the 1- and 6-year plan to the 1-year plan. Number 4, a project is removed in part or in whole from the 1-year plan. The form has a checkbox for each of these 4 reasons. Changing the priority order of projects already in the 1-year plan is not a revision of the 1-year plan. A change or changes to a project of miscellaneous work is not required to be reported as a revision of the 1-year plan. However, the actual locations of completed work, including maps and other applicable details, shall be reported on the following year's annual Report of Previous Year Highway or Street Improvement. Project of miscellaneous work is defined on page 2 of the proposed instructions. Examples are a paving district, miscellaneous culvert replacements, or new development. To summarize, if the Yes box is checked, you must select the reason for the notification by checking one of the boxes. If none of the boxes apply, check the Other box and explain in the space provided to the right. The example project is a new project. Therefore, leave this section blank. Do not check anything. The next group of entries is about classification and standards that apply to the project. The proposed instructions are found on pages 18 and 19. Rows 14 and 15 of the spreadsheet is where the classification and standards that apply to the project are identified. Those with training and experience will know how to find the national and state functional classifications and the standards that apply to this project. Training is available. Check Nebraska LTAP's training calendar. There are also videos on the Nebraska Department of Transportation's website. For the example project, the national functional classification was given as Major Collector and the state functional classification as Other Arterial. It is good to check to see if the road is on the national highway system by looking at the online map on the Nebraska Department of Transportation's website. This example assumes the road is not on the national highway system. Since this is a low-speed road in a commercial industrial area, this video assumes that the county would choose to use urban area design standards. This is based on Note 3 of the Minimum Design Standards, Title 428, Nebraska Administrative Code, Chapter 2, on page 47. With that assumption, Table 3D on pages 57 and 58 of the Minimum Design Standards applies to the example project. Although you cannot see it in the video, for both entries there are drop-down boxes from which to select the functional classifications and the table. Row 16 of the spreadsheet is for speed information, the design speed that will be used, and the posted speed limit or anticipated speed limit at the conclusion of the project when the road or street opens to traffic. The instructions for these entries are on page 19 of the proposed instructions. For the example project, the posted speed limit is 25 miles per hour. Check that against the minimum design standards. Table 3D on page 57 applies. First, since the base course will be reconstructed, the work type is new and reconstructed. See page 39 of the minimum design standards. The new and reconstructed values are in the middle column. If this was a 3R project, the values would come from the column on the right. The minimum design speed could be anywhere between 30 miles per hour and 45 miles per hour, according to Table 3D. The example project will be designed to a minimum 30 miles per hour. that meets the requirement of Note 8 that the design speed must be equal to or greater than the posted or anticipated speed limit after the work is done and the road is open to traffic. The minimum standard will be met. If a design speed of 30 miles per hour cannot be met due to peculiar circumstances that pose a hardship, the county has the option of requesting a relaxation of standards. There is a box to check further down on the form if the county plans to make such a request. On the spreadsheet, enter 30 miles per hour for the design speed, and the posted speed limit is assumed to remain at 25 miles per hour. Although you cannot see it in the video, for both entries there are drop-down boxes from which to select the speed. Rows 17, 18, and 19 of the spreadsheet is for traffic volume information. The 3 cells on the left side are for the initial year, or when the project is completed, and the 3 cells on the right side are for the design year, which is the anticipated life cycle of the project. The instructions for these entries are on page 19 of the proposed instructions. An estimate must be made of what the traffic will be when the project opens to traffic, called the initial year. This example assumes that year to be 2021. For new and reconstructed work, as it is in this example, Note 7 on page 48 of the minimum design standards indicates that the minimum design year is 20 years from the initial year. Therefore, the design year is 2041. However, Note 7 also indicates that for a road with fewer than 750 vehicles per day, the traffic volume for the initial year is the minimum. You can use a higher volume, but the initial year traffic volume is the minimum required. In other words, if the traffic level is low, under 750 vehicles per day, and is not anticipated to exceed 750 vehicles per day within the life of the project, such as a new development or traffic generator coming online, there is no need to estimate traffic volume for the design year. It is not the intent of the NBCS to require counting traffic and converting raw data into ADT numbers for all projects, or any specific level of precision with respect to traffic volumes, especially for low-volume roads. However, traffic volumes are important insofar as they may determine which standards apply and may help in deciding relaxation of standards requests. Examples are, in the tables, certain criteria apply only to ADT fewer than 400 vehicles per day, and for low water stream crossings and fords, the standards require ADT fewer than 50 vehicles per day. For the example project, the current traffic volume ADT is 500 vehicles per day with 15% heavy trucks. This example will assume a small amount of baseline growth to 520 vehicles per day and a new industry moving in by 2020, which will cause an additional estimated 100 vehicles per day for a total of 620 vehicles per day when the project opens to traffic. Since Note 7 allows the 620 vehicles per day figure to be used as a minimum, this example uses that figure for both the initial year and the design year. In the example, the cells on the right side remain blank, as no entry is necessary according to Note 7. Rows 21 through 28 of the spreadsheet is for roadway information, existing information, and what is proposed to be done with this project. The instructions for these entries are on page 20 and 21 of the proposed instructions. The left side is for information on the existing facility. Enter the width in feet and the surface type. The width is assumed to be feet. Enter only the number, don't put the word or abbreviation for feet. For surface type, in the spreadsheet there is a drop-down box. The right side is for information on the proposed improvement. Enter the planned width, the proposed surface type, the thickness of the proposed surfacing, and the work type. The thickness is assumed to be in inches. Enter only the number. For work type, there is a drop-down box. A traveled way is the portion of the roadway for the movement of vehicles, exclusive of shoulders and bicycle lanes. Essentially, it is comprised of through travel lanes. A through travel lane is a portion of the traveled way designated for movement of vehicles in one direction or for shared use. The majority of roads and streets have 2 through lanes, The traveled way for those is simply the sum of the two through lane widths. It gets more complicated for some multi-lane streets in municipalities and some roads in suburban areas. For example, when a median is present, there are two separate roadways and therefore two traveled ways. A median typically separates traffic flowing in opposite directions. A median can be raised, flush, depressed, or a barrier type, such as a Jersey barrier. A shoulder is the portion of the roadway adjacent to the non-curbed travelway or an auxiliary lane that accommodates stopped vehicles, emergency use, and lateral support of subbase, base, and surface courses. A base consists of all layers directly or sequentially underneath the roadway surface, including layers such as foundation course and subgrade. There is a drop-down box available with descriptions. At the bottom of this section is extra space if any additional explanation is needed. Below that are the abbreviations used on this form for the three types of work to help the general public understand the form. For the example project, the existing travelway width is 24 feet, with 12 feet through travel lanes and 2-foot turf shoulders. Check those against the minimum design standards. Table 3D on page 57 applies. First, since the base course will be reconstructed, the work type is new and reconstructed. See page 39 of the minimum design standards. The new and reconstructed values are in the middle column. If this was a 3R project, the values would come from the column on the right. Lane width and shoulder width are a function of the traffic volume. In this example, the ADT is 620 vehicles per day. The minimum lane width requirement is 11 feet. The example project plans to keep the through travel lanes at 12-foot width. The minimum standard will be met. The minimum shoulder requirement is 4 feet. The example project plans to widen the shoulders to 4 feet in order to meet the minimum requirement. If 4 feet cannot be met due to peculiar circumstances that pose a hardship, the county has the option of requesting a relaxation of standards for shoulder width. There is a box to check further down the form if the county plans to make such a request. For the example project, enter the existing traveled way width of 24 feet with 12-foot through travel lanes and 2-foot turf shoulders. The existing road surface type is asphalt. Enter 12 feet for the planned through travel lane width. The proposed road surface type is Portland cement concrete. It will be 8 inches thick. The project will reconstruct the base course. The roadway work is therefore new and reconstructed. Again, there are drop-down boxes for many of these entries. Rows 30 through 36 of the spreadsheet is for bridges and structures information, existing information, and what is proposed to be done with this project. The instructions for these entries are on pages 22 and 23 of the proposed instructions. In the far left column, list all bridges, non-buried structures, or buried non-bridge sized culverts all the way down to an opening length of 4 feet as measured along the center of the road, and all low water stream crossings and fords within the project limits. List them all, even those not included in the project scope of work. Do not list structures which are not on or under the highway, road, or street. An example is a pipe under a driveway which intersects the highway, road, or street. These and any other non-buried structures or buried non-bridge sized culverts not included on the list, but included in the scope of work, should be accounted for in the Other Scope of Work section further down on the form, or on a separate sheet as needed to provide complete documentation of the scope. See page 7 of the proposed instructions, 8.1d, for proper preparation of a separate sheet. Enter the municipality or county number for each bridge and structure in the far left column. Also, list the National Bridge Inventory or NBIS number for bridge-sized structures, an opening of more than 20 feet as measured along the center of the roadway. In the second and third columns, enter information on existing bridges and structures. Enter the structure type and condition information. There is a drop-down box for structure type. The right side is for information on proposed improvements. Enter the proposed bridge or structure type, the size, design loading, and work type. There are drop-down boxes for structure type and design loading and work type. For size, the entry is manual. More about that later. For the example project, the existing bridge has a 26-foot clear bridge width. Check that against the minimum design standards. Table 3D on page 58 applies. First, the bridge is being replaced, so the work type is new and reconstructed. See page 37 of the minimum design standards. The new and reconstructed values are in the middle column. If this was a 3R project, the values would come from the column on the right. For a traffic volume of 620 vehicles per day, the minimum clear bridge width requirement is 28 feet. The project must build a bridge so that it has a clear bridge width of 28 feet or request a relaxation of standards from the NBCS. The example project assumes a 28-foot clear bridge width. The planned length depends on a drainage study and type size length recommendations. With Nebraska's erodible soils, quite often the bridge length must be increased. The example project assumes a 130-foot bridge length. For this example, this is the only bridge or structure within the limits of the project. It is County Bridge 2-13. The NBIS number is C0022-00315. The sufficiency rating is 40. It is structurally deficient and will be replaced with a bridge. Regarding entries for size, see the instructions. Since the new structure will be a bridge type of structure, simply enter the clear bridge width by the length, which in this case is expressed as 28 x 130. The default unit for width and length is feet. Again, for some entries, there are drop-down boxes available. For the length of a bridge or a non-buried structure, use its NBIS length. This screen shows examples. For any questions, ask someone familiar with the NBIS and bridge inspecting. This screen shows various structure types and what needs to be entered on the work project form for each type. For the example project, 28 by 130 was entered since it is a bridge. The same goes for a non-buried structure. The other types covered on this screen are CBC or concrete box culvert, CMP or corrugated metal pipe, LWSC or low water stream crossing, and Ford. The default unit for diameter is inches, and all other units are in feet. Rows 39 through 44 of the spreadsheet are for other scope of work information not mentioned in the roadway and bridge structure sections. The instructions for these entries are on page 24. The goal is to provide as complete of a description of the scope of work as is possible on this form. After you get done checking the boxes that apply, there is space below the boxes to describe any other scope of work and any other important, unique, significant, relevant, or noteworthy features that would help the public understand the full extent of the work or project. Examples may be work on connecting roads, intersections, buried non-bridge sized culverts, and non-buried structures opening length under 4 feet as measured along the center of the road, roundabouts, medians, lighting, curb ramps, environmental mitigation, on-street parking, off-street parking, alleys, driveways, etc. Listing permits, such as a permit to occupy state right-of-way or a 404 permit, is not required, but it is considered good practice to show these for the public record. Acquire right-of-way means acquisition of any right-of-way, including fee, permanent easement, and temporary easement. It is important to check this box if any right-of-way acquisition is anticipated, as it will be of great interest to adjacent landowners. For the example project, check grading, guardrail, assume that a construction detour will be needed, and there will be erosion control measures. For this example only, because of the need to widen the bridge and the shoulders, the assumption is that additional right-of-way will be needed, so acquire right-of-way is checked. Bridge removal, bridge redeck, and bridge rail are not checked. Bridge removal would be checked if a bridge or structure is being removed and not replaced. Since the bridge is being replaced, bridge redeck and bridge rail are not checked. If this was a bridge rehabilitation project and it was being redecked and the bridge rail was being replaced or rehabilitated, they would need to be checked, but that is not the case for this example project. A Core 404 permit will be necessary, and that is indicated in the space provided below the checkboxes. Rows 45 through 48 of the spreadsheet are for studies and analyses information. The instructions for these entries are on pages 24 and 25. For the example project, which is a few years away from construction, the drainage study may not be done just yet. Assume that is the case here and check Pending. At the time this form is being submitted, the county does not anticipate requesting a relaxation of standards, so that will be checked NA for not applicable. Cost-effective analyses are associated with 3R work. This is not a 3R project. Check Not Applicable for cost-effective analysis. The project does not anticipate doing any other benefit-cost analyses for the project. Check Not Applicable. Rows 49 through 50 of the spreadsheet, just below the analysis section, there are a few other entries: professional engineering services and an estimated construction schedule. The instructions for these entries are on pages 25 and 26. Professional engineering services are required by state law for projects that are estimated to cost $109,000 or more. That figure gets updated every 5 years. Check with the State Department of Administrative Services for the latest threshold. Refer to Statute 81-3445. That is total cost, planning costs, preliminary engineering, final engineering design, right-of-way acquisition, and construction. The example project is expected to cost $750,000. Professional engineering services are required. As mentioned earlier, the project is scheduled to be constructed in 2021. Estimate 15 calendar months. The construction start date only needs to be entered for projects on the one-year plan, so that space can be left blank unless you wish to enter it. Rows 51 through 53 of the spreadsheet are for financial information. The instructions for these entries are on pages 26 through 28. The cell county and city each has a formula $168,750 left side of that cell. State bridge funds cover 5% or $37,500, and the federal highway money covers 50% or $375,000. It all adds up to $750,000. Rows 54 and 55 of the spreadsheet are for signature and date. The instructions for these entries are on pages 26 through 28. The appointed superintendent signs. In the date field on the spreadsheet, there is a built-in formula to show the current date. We have gone through the proposed work project form from top to bottom using a hypothetical project. This is the document generated for the hypothetical project. On the proposed form, there are several areas that can be used if more space is needed to explain or add information. Another reason to do a project could be that it was required by a law or statute. It could be to meet Americans with Disabilities Act requirements. It could be to renovate an historic transportation structure. It could be a combined floodway and street project along with relocation of streets. There are many reasons for projects. Any reason that you put in the other space could be in addition to boxes above that are checked, or it could be the only reason for the project. The checkboxes are only some common reasons for doing a work or project. In the notification of revision of one-year plan, the other space could be used, for example, to explain splitting a project into phases, doing phase 1 in the one-year plan and delaying phase 2 until the next year. For the roadway, you may need to explain that there is a curb on one side and shoulders on the other side, or that lane widths vary, or that part of the project is gravel and another part is asphalt, or that there are multiple work types that apply to the project, or that a frontage road is being added. Examples for bridges and structures: if a design load other than HL93, HS20, or HS15 is used, you can use this space to explain. If a new structure is for pedestrians only, this space can be used to communicate that. For other scope of work, there are many possibilities here. Examples such as constructing a roundabout, replacing concrete panels, or restoration of an historic transportation structure. A form cannot cover every possible situation. If additional space, beyond what is provided on the form, is needed to explain or clarify, attach a separate sheet or sheets. Be sure to include identifiers on each added sheet. See instruction 8.1d on page 7 of the proposed instructions. It is good to have identification in case sheets get separated. Try to relate the additional information back to the form or the section of the form it's referring to. If copies are made, usually it is done one-sided, and if anything is written on the reverse side, it gets missed. So do not write on the reverse side of any sheet, including the form itself. This is an example of what an attached sheet could look like. This was the 8th topic in a series of videos, the purpose of which is to summarize Nebraska's management of public roads and streets as directed by state law and also by rule and regulation. The focus of this video was how to complete a work project form, one of the 1- and 6-year plan forms required for counties and municipalities. Although the form presented in this video is a proposed form, it is preferred by the NBCS, which anticipates taking it through the rulemaking process and making it official.